Hello and welcome to the Biochar podcast. I'm Sam Zagami, the current cluster manager here at ANZBIG. Today on the podcast, we welcome Louisa Kiely, CEO of Carbon Management Services. Louisa is a trained agricultural economist and former wool grower. Louisa can only be described as a pioneering force in Australia's carbon farming and low carbon agricultural movements. With over 25 years experience spanning agricultural economies, marketing, business development, and carbon project strategy, Louisa brings both scientific depth and a grounded farmer first mindset. Louisa, welcome to the show.
Sam, thank you very much, and thank you for those kind words. Obviously, yes, I've been around for a long time, and Farmers First is a good expression.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, just to kind of start off, I would love for you to give us some insight on what brought you into carbon farming and low carbon agriculture.
No problem. So, Sam, we come from a marketing background in Sydney. We are business people, and in Sydney we had an agency called Boomerang Integrated Marketing and Advertising. When the children were a certain age, having done agricultural economics at university, I remembered that I actually had wanted a farm. And and I went out to the central west of New South Wales, the Mudgee district, very well known for its fine wool growing. And we bought 1,000 bare acres. We bought the weather paddock. Those of the wool people and the sheep people in the audience will understand what I say when we bought the weather paddock. It's the toughest paddock on the farm and the first one to be sold off. So I went out there with a lot of book knowledge and very little knowledge of how I was going to turn 1,000 weather weaners, fine wool weather weaners, into an income or wool growing enterprise. What we did find out as we made every mistake in the book, and we did some training, we did holistic management, and so we wanted to understand the role better. And that was where we started to understand the role that farmers had. What was the problem? Too much carbon in the air. What do farmers control? Not only do they control over 50% of the land mass, but they also control the photosynthetic activity of that land mass via trees and via every blade of grass, which is a solar panel. And so every blade of grass and every tree is taking carbon dioxide out of the air, using the carbon in its structures, both within the tree, taking the carbon back down into the soil, but every grass is the same, taking that energy down into the soil where the microbes use the carbon for their own structures and also, as they die, store the carbon in the soil. So we came to understand this incredible role that a farmer could play in what's called climate mitigation. So we literally take it out of the air and store it both in trees and back in soil. What we did at that stage is go, wait a minute, there must be a market for this. And I'm going back a long time, as you just said. And so it was very nascent at that time. And we took this idea to the government. We advocated, we went overseas, we looked everywhere that we could. We got in touch with the science, all of those things. Why can't we have what's called a method so that farmers are able to be paid to do this service? This is a service. Not only could they have an income, but they could also improve their soil's health. As you improve soil carbon, you also improve your water holding capacity and your soil structure. Science has that well documented. So not only was there potential for an income, there was a potential to increase your into drought later and out of drought sooner. So they are now commonly called the co-benefits. However, at that time, there was no method, there was no ability for that to happen. And just finally on that first one, the amazingness of the soil carbon, which we're best known for, we're best known in that soil carbon space, is that not only do you get to sell the carbon that you have proven that you have sequestered in the soil, you get to keep the carbon in the soil. It's what other product can a farmer sell the product but keep the benefit? So it was all of these things that we put together that we became determined, along with others, to ensure that the soil wasn't forgotten in this new low carbon farming plus an income space. Yeah.
Wow, what a journey that must have been. And I can really tell that your passion and the pioneering aspect to what I spoke about in my intro, you've just kind of put there straight away. You've been known to say soil carbon is the largest carbon sink over which we have control. And I'm just wondering if you could unpack that a little bit for our audience.
No worries at all. And just as I start that, I'll also say we have been known. People have said to us over the years, "And you're so passionate," and we'd say, "Yes, but you can't eat it." Which is why
No.
we did our best to pair it with an income. So a sink and a source is just a little bit complicated to explain right here, but both the soils, the trees, and the ocean are a sink for carbon dioxide. That is to say that they can take it out of the air. And the ocean is the largest sink. However, we still don't know how to control getting the carbon in there. There's a lot of talk about, the oceans are acidifying and those types of things, let alone taking over the foreshore and swimming pools collapsing into them. But on the other side of that coin, in terms of sequestration, there's also a lot of talk about what mangroves can do, what seaweed can do. Big sea kelp forests could also be a sink, that is to say, take it in from the air and store it. So the reason for saying that soil carbon is the largest carbon sink over which we have control is because farmers control over 54% of the land mass. Therefore, as a group, we have control under circumstances under which farmers would be happy to, engage with this, that we've got the largest sink. Therefore, the potential largest amount of mitigation. So what we do is we, as farmers, and we don't own that farm any longer, but what a farmer does is literally take out. So the carbon dioxide that's in the air currently is sometimes referred to as the legacy load, and it's the load of carbon dioxide that's been put up there up to 70 years ago, a long time ago, and it's accumulated and it's made this blanket, and this blanket is what's causing the warming. What we do is we take that legacy load out and store it safely back in the ground, which is where it came from. We burn the fossil fuels are very old forests buried for a very long amount of time, and then we dig them up and we burn them, and the carbon dioxide goes into space. So it's a way of saying this is how important farmers are, and this is worldwide. If we have a very good method now called the 2021 soil carbon method, and if that could be replicated across large areas, across many countries, we could really start to influence this climate change effect, and not only reduce emissions. So everyone's talking about reducing emissions. Yes, we need to do that, but that doesn't stop the legacy load that's currently up there from warming. So if we only reduce emissions, we won't be able to solve the issue. We must find ways to take that legacy load out of the air and store it safely. There are other people thinking about storing it in man-made towers, and capturing it and then turning it into a liquid and then putting it back deep down in the underground of old mining fishes and things like that. So there are some man-made, solutions coming. We prefer the nature-made solution, which is to improve your farming while you're also affecting the climate change mitigation. So that's how I
Yeah.
see that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it just goes to show the importance um, of individual steps that even a farmer can make to the way that they do farming.
Yeah.
Um, I'm wondering what else government actually needs to do to realize the carbon farming opportunity.
So we've been incredibly lucky in that our government, and it came in the first method by which anybody, both farming and non-farming, so there are both farming and non-farming methods available for either reducing emissions or sequestering carbon. There's one for piggeries, there's one for landfill, those type of ones. But it only came in to activity in 2013. So it took us the first 8 or so years to lobby for these methods, and at that point it was which industry were being proactive in understanding that these methods, once made, could then assist their cohort, be it the landfill guys or the piggery or the dairy, those ones. And for us, the soil carbon fraternity, to turn this into an income stream. So we were one of the first methods that were made available, and these are government regulated, highly scientific. It's one of the things they say about it is it's complex, and it is. However, it's not rocket science, and farmers are very good at navigating so long as they're given the right information. So we have got a soil carbon method. We're one of the few methods that have gone through 3 iterations. And I used to say, first of all, we used to say there will be a soil carbon method, and people said, tell them they're dreaming. Tell them they're dreaming. That's not going to happen. And then when it did happen, I used to say, well, this is the T model Ford one. Let's not throw that one out, because guess what? From a T model Ford, we now drive Porsches and things
Yeah.
like that. So we are one of the methods that has enabled evolution. We've actually evolved from the first to the third. Now, what governments can do, they really have. I mean, we really have only had this new government for a few months. Prior to that, because of the argy-bargy between, left and right, they go into this standstill phase and nothing happens. And so we are just ramping back up again. There's been reviews, there's been slowdowns. The government needs to inform those who are assisting to make these methods to say, please get a wriggle on. And they're my nice words, Sam. They're my
Okay.
nice words. So the standstill has to stop. The slowdown has to stop. One of the methods has taken 5 years and is not yet done. Now, how can we assist farmers to have an income? How can we assist the government to reach their own emissions targets? They need to just come to this point. I have one hope, which is if we get that COP number, whatever it is, not not this year's, but next year's, which is the big carbon, climate change conference that they have that's worldwide. If Australia gets given that, and we are in competition with Turkey, I believe, if Australia gets that, I think we'll see, the government saying, so what the government needs to do is tell the ones who are dealing with these things to get a wriggle on. That's what because they've set the whole thing up, and it's there, and it's a $1 billion industry. It's a big industry now, but we've had this hiatus, and it really does behove the government now to to get a wriggle on.
Plain and simple. Get a wriggle on. Can't put it any simpler than that. Yeah, and I think that that's you've hit the nail on the head there in terms of, unfortunately, with governments and the argy-bargy that you spoke of like the left and the right, there's no movement forward. So what I'm hearing you say is just that if the government could just get behind it and start to make these actionable steps and create the change, then it enables the farmers to then be able to start implementing these things. And what would you say to farmers and investors either in or considering moving into the carbon farming space?
So I've got a very interesting, and I'd like to quote actually. So the government at the moment has what's called the Carbon Farming Outreach Program. And I'm quoting from the publicly available training package. So these are people who have been trained as per what the government wishes to put out in terms of the carbon farming space and what farmers can and can't do. This is a particular one on page, and I don't even know who Mr. Youngman is, but they're quoting, and this is publicly available knowledge. So they're asking, the inquirer says, Harry, what's some of the advice you would give farmers and land managers who are looking to improve their soil carbon and their soil health, or moving into the carbon farming space? Mr. Youngman says, one of the first things I'd look at doing is getting a piece of paper out and writing down all those things in the current production system that are frustrating you. Perfect. Yes. And that could include, oh, my soil isn't responding the way it used to. My animal health isn't as good as it used to be. Are there any programs available that would assist me to, potentially improve that while lowering my costs? And if they look into carbon farming, that is one of the areas that can be looked into. A good example there is methane reduction in cattle. So when there is a method that is being considered that's a longer story, but let's just say there's a method being considered to lower methane emissions. It's a big deal for cattle farmers. They burp all this methane. Methane's 25 times as bad in the air as CO2, according to the science. Now, if they reduce that by various different things, they're looking at feed additives, they're looking at genetics. All of these things are now coming.
Adding biochar, for example.
Biochar is a great
feed,
example, especially with some of your members who have done extensive experiments, starting with the chickens, but very successfully improving those. And I won't mention the name, even though he's one of my favourite people.
Probably one of my favorite people too.
Probably, I would imagine. But what they find is that methane's a loss to the system. And so when you improve your methane loss, even if it was as simple as more productive grasses, the more productive the grass is, or the more productive the growth is, less methane emitted. And so methane is a loss to the system. Therefore, if we improve that, again, so my cows aren't doing as well as they could. How do I do that? Oh, actually, maybe I can put it together with some of this carbon farming things. It's the realization that some of these issues that they're facing can be solved using this new approach to an income and navigating through the difficulties. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for speaking to that. Carbon offsetting has had a bad rap over the last few years. How do you feel like we could avoid similar issues happening in carbon farming?
It's happening. It's happened. Don't worry about that. We are navigating those. It's not such as a bad rap for us in the soil carbon space, but it's the questions, and bringing into question some of the aspects of the methodology and things like that. And it's been unfortunately played out in the media for some of the time. What we are at Carbon Management Services and also through the conference is that we are determined to bring farmers, science and policymakers back together so that we don't have this silo effect of, this group, we won't give, whatever it is. This group is a bit disgruntled. We don't like what we see, and then it's released in a manner that hasn't allowed the other group to have any say in what's been released. So what would happen if they actually talked to each other first? So
Simple. Collaboration, speaking,
that's right.
communicating.
That's right.
Yeah.
I could say let women run the world, but I better not say that on a
Well,
podcast.
you and I are starting because we're on the podcast and we're just two women having a conversation about it. So it's perfect. We're starting.
That's right. So it really is about talking before you do anything else, but talking with those approach. So we hope that we can provide a platform. So we're inviting the farmers who are doing the projects. We're inviting the developers who are developing the projects. We're inviting the science who are interested in the data that these projects have provided, and we're interested in collaborating in how we can join those two groups together, and academics and others, with trust, so that the data can be shared, and then to let the policymakers know, we're all on the same song sheet, look at that, and provide, because one thing you do know about the policymakers, and the government thing, what we've learned over time is always take a solution to them. Sure, you can go and you can say, this is really bad, and it's horrible, and look what they're doing, but if you go and say, but actually what I think we could do, is bring this together, have some sort of data sharing, and then see what collaboration can do. So that's our carbon. It's the name is the 2025 Carbon Farming Conference and Expo. Sam, we actually reverted to the old name. Yes.
Why did you decide to do that?
Because I had been away for 2 years, and that's what I'm known for. And when people started to try and say, she's putting on the low carbon agriculture conference, well, who's that? And as soon as we turned that around, this is my 12th conference, Sam. So, I was able to build on it, and I just had to be, I just had to learn that lesson a little bit as well. So, no, we're very comfortable now to call it the 2025 National Carbon Farming Conference and Expo in Albury in early November.
Wonderful. And I guess that's where, what you were speaking about in terms of the collaboration and the talking, that's where that can happen in a conference setting like that, where you're getting the farmers together and getting the policymakers together, potential investors, and then that way you can actually have this collaboration to be able to affect change, basically. And so we will add the website in the show notes. I guess I wanted to know any final thoughts from you or final comments.
No, I think your questions allowed me to cover a very wide range of things. We have got the departments coming. We've got the Clean Energy Regulator. So I have tried to put that rounded sort of discussion together. And so I thank you for allowing me to speak about that.
Pleasure. Thank you so much, Louisa. And hopefully ANZBIG will be able to be there at the conference as well. We're a big supporter of what you do. I remember a few years ago, Don and I were there in Albury, and it was just wonderful to see the vast range of people that you had there, and what a great conference. And so, yeah, hopefully we'll be able to see you then. But thank you very much for your time.
Thank you as well. Okay. Thanks, Sam.